They held a family vote right in front of my daughter. Mom said, "Raise your hand if you think she should stay home at Christmas." Every hand went up. My girl just sat there, watching them. I only said, "Understood." A week later, when I refused to co-sign the $358,000 mortgage for their golden child, Dad showed up shaking, screaming on my porch. Can you imagine sitting there, watching your own family one by one raise their hands to vote your child out of Christmas? The sting of that moment burned. But what happened a week later, when I finally said no, truly set our world on fire, ripping open a wound that had been festering for years. My daughter, Grace, was only 12. And that day, on the way to my parents' house for their annual Christmas Eve dinner, she was quiet. Too quiet. She always got like that, you know? Like she was bracing herself. Like she knew deep down what kind of accessory she was in that house. I was already carrying my peace offering, a store-bought pecan pie. Mom's text had read, "Don't bring anything complicated," which was code for, "If you cook it, we'll find a way to complain." Classic. We walked into the dining room. The table was already set for 12, a perfect little postcard of family joy. Name cards, Mom's looping script, all laid out. Mom, Dad, Liam, Emma, Aunt Val, Uncle Rob, Nana, Papa, Tyler, Mia, baby. And then, at the very end, just guessed. No card for me. No card for Grace. I pretended not to notice. I was used to being the extra chair, pulled in from the garage. We'd barely been there 10 minutes when Mom tapped her wine glass with a butter knife. The room went silent. She beamed like this was some fun little game. "Okay, quick family vote," she announced. "We just need to clear up expectations for Christmas Eve. Hands up if you think Grace should stay home this year, since it's, mostly for the little cousins." It took a second for the words to sink in. My blood ran cold. Then 10 hands went up. 10 hands, no hesitation, like it was muscle memory. My dad's hand, my sister Emma's, already piling food onto her plate. Grace was sitting on the piano bench in the corner, a paper snowflake she'd cut in the car still clutched in her lap. She just watched their wrists lift. Nobody looked at her, but I did. My throat closed up. The clock over the stove ticked, so loud it felt like it was inside my head. Mom shrugged, still smiling. "It'll be hectic, honey. Better for her to relax at home. We'll FaceTime you." I felt my hands tremble. Just one word escaped me. "Got it." I walked the pecan pie to the kitchen island, placing it beside a cake piped with my nephew's name. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I couldn't trust my voice. Grace quietly slid her snowflake into her pocket and asked Mom if she could help set napkins. "That's sweet, but we've got a system," Mom chirped, shooing her back to the bench. I should have taken her hand right then. Walked out. I didn't. Not yet. I'm Daniel, but everyone calls me Danny. 40 years old, HVAC tech in Columbus, Ohio. Not fancy, but I'm steady. I do clean installs. I fix what's broken. I show up when I say I will. I've got a small ranch house, 3 bedrooms, beige siding that's always fading. Got full custody of Grace when she was 6. Her mom? That's a whole other story. I make enough to pay the mortgage, fill the fridge, send Grace to camp for a week in the summer. In my family, I was always the reliable one. Translation? I was the wallet with legs. Dad's truck transmission? I wired him $2,100, labeled it Dad Huntington, because he couldn't figure out Zelle. Mom wanted a new washer and dryer? I used my Lowe's card. Emma's kitchen redo? I spent a weekend moving her gas line for free, covered the inspector's permit fee, because she said, "We're drowning, Danny." Liam's craft beer launch. Kegerators on my credit card. Nana's prescriptions? $150 every Friday for years. Power shut off my parents during a cold snap? Paid the whole balance online between calls. Sent Mom the confirmation. "You're a lifesaver," she'd said. "You'll get it back at Christmas." I never did. They always said, "Thank you." They never wrote it down. That's how it always was. But with Grace, it was different. She was an accessory. Cute when she was quiet, a burden otherwise. Never overtly cruel. 1,000 tiny paper cuts. They'd forget her name for the cousin gift exchange, so she'd sit and watch others unwrap. Told us to wait for the next family photo last 4th of July. It never came. Thanksgiving, Mom put her at the kids' table, a folding chair for guests. Grace would bump the table leg, and I'd just watch. Nana would get a handmade card from Grace and say, "You're so good for not making a mess." Then set a sweating glass of iced tea right on top of it. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was modeling resilience for Grace. What happened that night wasn't a surprise, not really. It was just the first time they raised their hands. They did it in front of my kid. And that snapped something inside me. After the vote, Mom just moved on. Great. So, it'll just be the babies on Christmas Eve. Less chaos. Danny, you'll bring that folding table. Liam, playlist. We'll FaceTime Grace, of course. Got it, I said again, the word tasting like ash. I walked Grace to the car when dessert came out. We sat there, doors closed, heat blasting. My untouched pie was still on the counter inside. She looked out at the darkness. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My reflection in the glass looked like a tired ghost. "I'm not little," she said. Her voice was small. "I know. They made me feel little. I know." It hurt to say I knew. I should have protected her better. In that parking lot, I promised myself I would. A week later, Mom called. 9:07 a.m. I was parked outside a job site. "Quick question, sweetie," she purred. "Don't say no before you hear me out." I closed my eyes. "What's up?" "It's about Emma and Tyler's pre-approval. They found the perfect place in Upper Arlington. 3 bedrooms, fenced yard, schools are amazing, but the bank's being such a pill about the student loans. It's $358,000, which is honestly a steal. All they need is a cosigner for a year, maybe 2. You have the best credit, you know that." She laughed, like it was a compliment. "It won't cost you anything, Danny. Just a formality." I looked at the job ticket, the photo of the old heat pump on my iPad. My hands, cracked knuckles, the nail I'd slammed 2 days earlier. A year or 2. A formality? A $358,000 debt on my back if anything went sideways. The same week they voted my kid off Christmas. My mouth went dry. My own breathing sounded loud in my ears. Mom filled the silence. "They already have the loan officer lined up. I gave him your email. He said he'd DocuSign you the packet this afternoon." Her voice turned syrupy. "You're such a good brother. This will take so much pressure off you when we're in the new place. Imagine Christmas there." "Oh, except Grace is staying home, but we'll work around it. It's going to be beautiful." I pictured Grace on that piano bench. I pictured 10 hands in the air. "Mom," I said. She was already in that fake grateful tone. "No, don't even." "No," I said again. "I won't cosign." Silence. Then she hissed my full name like I was 9. "Daniel." "Stop being dramatic." "It's not dramatic. It's protecting my child. And myself." "You're punishing Emma because of some misunderstanding at dinner." "I'm setting a boundary because of a pattern," I said, surprised by the calm in my voice. "And because I don't want a $358,000 debt tied to me for the next 30 years. "It's not 30. Oh my God, you always make everything about money." That was rich. "The DocuSign is coming," she said tightly. "Just click it, Danny. Don't make this a whole thing." "It's already a whole thing." I hung up before she could say more. My hands were shaking worse than they had at the vote. At lunch, the DocuSign came. Subject line: "Please sign conventional mortgage borrower 2." My name in the salutation. $358,000. Term: 30 years. Boxes for initials on every page. I scrolled to the end. A big blue button. Finish. I clicked decline to sign. A prompt asked for a reason. I typed, "I will not co-sign this mortgage." Submit. A red banner appeared. Document declined. I took 3 screenshots. Forwarded the confirmation to myself. Saved the PDF to my family financial folder. right next to the power bill receipt, the transmission invoice, and a dozen other things I'd paid for people who never sent receipts back. Then I texted Emma and Tyler. I'm not your cosigner. I put my phone face down. The old heat pump I was replacing groaned its last, dying cleanly into my cart. It felt like a message, in a language only I could hear. The fallout was immediate. Mom called 5 times before 3 p.m. One message started polite. We just need to talk, honey. By the end, she was crying, saying she'd never ask me for anything. The next, she sounded furious. You don't get to punish the whole family for your choices. Grace isn't even. She stopped herself, just like always, right before she gave the whole game away. This is so unlike you. Emma texted a paragraph about timelines. We already gave notice to our landlord, and you said family first. Tyler's text was shorter. You're screwing us. He added a middle finger emoji, which I took as gratitude. He kept it to 1.
Dad didn't text.
He never did. He just showed up. I was doing dishes after dinner when I saw his truck in the driveway, the one I'd helped save with a new transmission. The porch light held snow like glitter. He got out, jaw clenched, shoulders tight. 3 hard knocks. That cop knock he'd perfected when we were kids. Grace was at the table, math notebook open. Her head shot up, pencil clattering. It's Grandpa, I said, my voice even. Go to your room for a bit. Okay, she said, and went without arguing. That's how I knew she'd been holding her breath for days. I opened the door, leaning against the frame, blocking his entry. What are you doing? He demanded, his hands shaking. Not just from the cold, I realized. You embarrassed your mother. You embarrassed your sister. She cried. Are you proud of yourself? I declined to co-sign a mortgage, Dad. That's all I did. You've always been the steady one. You know that. You step up. That's your role. Not anymore.
He scoffed.
Over a Christmas misunderstanding? Grow up. You had a family vote to exclude my kid, Dad. Right there at the table. Hands up. No debate. And you raised yours. He flinched. That's what this is about. You're going to blow up your relationship with your entire family over a holiday? It's not about a holiday. It's about what you told my daughter with your hand. You told her she doesn't count. I'm not funding a family my kid isn't part of. He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. You're holding us hostage with your money. I laughed, a short, ugly sound. I've been held hostage with my money for 10 years. His jaw worked. You don't talk to your father like that. Then don't talk to your son like I'm an A. We stood there. His breath came out in white bursts. Behind him, the snow fell harder. My neighbor's inflatable Santa slowly collapsed in his yard. He tried one more angle. Your sister is a good person. She deserves that house. That's fine. She can deserve it with her own loan. Something in him curdled. He started shouting, words that wouldn't stick to the walls because they didn't have enough truth. Ungrateful. Disloyal. Influenced by that kid. My hands curled in my pockets, not into fists, but around my phone. I thought about recording him. I didn't. I let him finish. When he paused for breath, I said the line I'd practiced on the way to the door. Dad, this is simple. I'm not your backup bank. He blinked, took a step back. He looked past me, into my living room, at the used IKEA couch, at the tree Grace had decorated with paper rings and a crooked star, at the 2 empty dining chairs I'd found for $5 on Facebook Marketplace. Maybe he saw for the first time that I lived here. Not in his idea of me. You'll regret this, he said, finally. Maybe, I said. But I won't regret protecting Grace. He went down the steps, shaking his head, got in his truck, and backed out too fast, wheels spinning over the thin ice. I watched his taillights vanish around the corner. I closed the door. Grace stood in the hallway in her socks. Is he mad? She asked. Yeah, I said. But we're okay. She nodded, slid her hand into mine. We went back to the table, finished her math problem about 2 trains leaving different cities. The trick, I told her, is to be clear about your starting point. She smiled, unsure if it was a math joke. Maybe it was both. The next days were a mix of quiet and noise. Noise in my phone, quiet in my house. Group texts lit up like fireworks. Mom, we're so disappointed and we love you. In alternating lines, like she couldn't pick a lane. Emma sent the house listing 3 times, adding, Tyler's parents would co-sign, but their credit is trash. Liam, you always thought you were better than us. Aunt Val sent prayer hands and family over everything, then asked if I could look at her furnace. I didn't answer any of them. That was new for me. At work, I did what I always do. Thermostat out, new board in. Explaining to clients why their smart thermostat made their heat dumb. Carrying a 50-pound box across a yard without cutting a corner. Breathing through it. I didn't go to my parents' house that weekend. Mom texted, no hard feelings. Sunday dinner at 4. I stared at the screen until the bubbles faded. I cook spaghetti at home, the way Grace likes it, with garlic bread burnt on the edges. On Monday, I did one more thing for myself. I set up a folder in my email, Family Financial. I dragged every receipt, every Zelle transfer, every bill I'd paid, into it. It wasn't petty. It was the first time I'd put my own life in order, with them in mind. I didn't cancel the $150 Friday transfers yet. I know the rules, one boundary at a time if you want it to stick. My line was the mortgage. I would hold to that line. The rest would come in its own season. Meanwhile, real life kept moving. Grace had a winter concert at school. She played Good King Wenceslas on a loner trumpet, squinting so hard at the sheet music her glasses slid down her nose. I clapped until my palms stung. Afterwards, in the cafeteria, a couple of kids from her art club said, "You sounded like a real trumpet player." She looked at me like, "Do you hear this?" "They're right," I told her. I bought her a donut with red sprinkles. We ate it slowly in the car, crumbs on our coats, the radio low. I told her we were starting a new tradition for Christmas Eve. She looked wary. "Just us?" she asked. "Maybe not just us," I said. December 24th came, wet and gray. On the other side of town, in my family's house, there was probably a tree with coordinated ornaments, a couch covered in gifts. In my house, our tree leaned a little because I hadn't cut the trunk straight. Our gifts were wrapped in leftover birthday paper. I bought Grace a set of fancy markers and a sketchbook with heavy paper. I put them under the tree with the same care I'd use if they were diamonds. I set the table with our 4 mismatched plates. I put those 2 $5 chairs where guests would sit. I pulled a ham out of the oven, set out bowls of mac and cheese, green beans, and a salad no one was going to touch. I poured 2 sparkling apple ciders. I put 1 glass in front of the empty chair across from Grace. She looked at it, confused, but she smiled. "Who's that for?" she asked. "You'll see," I said. At 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Grace blinked, like I'd made a rabbit appear. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. It was my cousin Mark and his wife Tori. They lived 20 minutes away. We only ever saw them at family things, when Mom controlled the guest list. Mark held a paper bag with a baguette and a bottle of something expensive. Tori held a pan, foil-covered. "We brought bread and a sweet potato casserole," she said. "And 2 loud children, but they're staying with my sister tonight." Grace stood up, so fast her chair squeaked. "Hi," she said. And then, like a miracle, she said, "I'm really glad you're here." "Us too," Mark said. He stepped in, stamped snow off his boots, and hugged me in a way that said, I heard things. His voice was low. "For the record," he said, "the vote was messed up." "You heard about that?" I asked. "Everyone heard," Tori said. "Val told my mom. My mom told me. We decided we'd rather be in a house where a kid is wanted." I swallowed. That one sentence untied some knot in my chest. We ate. We talked about nothing dramatic. Grace showed them the snowflake she kept in her pocket, and Tori said, "That's beautiful," and put it on the mantel like it was a museum piece, not a napkin project. Mark asked Grace if she liked music. When she said trumpet, he said, "That's hardcore." I lasted 2 weeks on trombone. They laughed. We didn't mention my parents, or the house, or the mortgage, or the DocuSign. It was a rule I didn't have to say out loud. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed face down on the counter. 10 missed calls from Mom. 3 from Dad. 2 from Emma. 1 from Aunt Val. "Oh, where are you?" from Liam. The group thread said, "We're doing the gifts now. FaceTime." I put the phone in a drawer and closed it. Then I opened the drawer and put it on Do Not Disturb. It felt less like running away and more like choosing peace. Grace ate 3 rolls and asked for seconds on ham. She told a story about a classmate who tried to eat a glue stick. We all pretended to be shocked. It was normal. Normal felt like a warm jacket. After dinner, we played cards. We made up rules for a new game, wrote them on an index card, and called it Christmas Eve, like we were naming a country. Grace won because she kept track better than we did. Mark groaned and Tori hooped, and the room made a sound I didn't recognize in my house. Chorus. When they left, they took their casserole dish and left their presents behind. Grace stood in the doorway, waving until their taillights turned the corner. "That was better," she said. "Yeah," I said. "It was." She looked at the 2 extra chairs still at the table. "Are those for them?" "They were for anybody who wanted to be here." She nodded. "They wanted to be." I plugged in the tree lights. We sat on the couch under a blanket. She leaned her head on my shoulder, the way she used to when she was 5, and watched cartoons about trains. The house creaked, the way old houses do when the heater cycles. It sounded like someone settling in, not someone leaving. My phone buzzed once on the counter. A single message that came through despite Do Not Disturb, because I'd set Mark as a favorite years ago after he helped me move a broken dryer. It said, "Proud of you." The next morning, we opened gifts. Grace held the markers like they were fragile, telling me she wouldn't waste them. She drew a small card with a pine tree and wrote in neat letters that leaned like little kids, "Thank you for choosing me." She taped it to the fridge with a piece of glitter tape. When I made coffee, I touched the edge of the card. It was proof of something I had felt but never been able to say out loud. A week later, Emma texted a photo of a for rent sign and wrote, "Hope you're happy." I didn't reply. She followed with, "We'll remember this when you need something." I typed, "I won't ask," then deleted it. Set the phone down. Silence was cleaner. Dad didn't show up again. Mom sent a framed picture of the cousins from Christmas Eve with a note, "Wish you were here." I put it face down on the bookshelf behind a stack of manuals. Maybe one day I'll flip it over. Not today. On New Year's Day, Grace and I went for a walk in the park. The air bit our cheeks. She tucked her mittened hand into my elbow, like old couples do. We watched geese skate on thin ice and decided it was the dumbest ballet. She told me she'd signed up for Art Club's spring fundraiser, making cards for people in the neighborhood. "I'll make one for Nana," she said. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said. "Even if she puts her drink on it."
We laughed.
It wasn't bitter. It was a release valve. I realized I'd been waiting for a consequence to swallow us whole. The big family rupture. The exile. The word ungrateful nailed to my door. It did come in a way, but it wasn't big. It was a quiet drift, like a boat pushed out from a dock on a lake. Not dramatic. Just free. In January, I got an envelope from the lender with a form letter saying, "We're sorry to see you've declined to participate in this loan." It had a carbon copy feel, like the last line of a play. I slid it into my family financial folder and closed the drawer. I made one more choice that month that felt small but solid. I went into my bank app and renamed my Friday transfer from Nana's Meds to Friday Gift. I wanted better words for what I give. I left the amount the same. I'd keep paying it until I decided otherwise, because that was my decision to make, not Mom's. And now that I had said one big no, my smaller yes felt like mine again. In February, Grace brought home a flyer for a middle school talent show. She asked if it was okay if she tried out with Winter from Vivaldi. I told her it was perfectly okay to be ambitious. She practiced in the dining room, trumpet case open like a busker. The sound wasn't pretty. It was brave. The night of the show, Mark and Tori came. They sat in the second row and clapped like they were related. Grace walked on stage in Converse and a black dress I'd found on sale at Target and blew those first cold notes like she'd opened a door to the season. I thought about all the rooms she'd been kept out of. I thought about the doors I could open. Back at home, I hung her program on the fridge, underneath the card she'd made me. I straightened both with the edge of my hand. I am not a hero. I'm just a guy who fixes things, who finally realized the first leak I needed to fix was where all my love and money were draining out into a family that smiled as they watched.
I did one thing. I didn't co-sign.
I said no, and it was enough to change the shape of our house. On the next Christmas Eve, I set the table again for plates. 2 extra chairs. Maybe it looked like we were waiting for people who wouldn't come. Maybe we were. But on the mantel, Tori's place for Grace's paper snowflake stayed empty, on purpose, so the snowflake could breathe. In the middle of the table, Grace stood a card she had made, our new centerpiece. It had a tree and a trumpet and 2 chairs drawn in simple lines. Underneath, in the steady handwriting she'd been practicing all year, it said, "We belong." Have you ever had a moment where you realized you had to draw a line, no matter the cost? What would you have done if your family voted your child out of Christmas? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below.